Hey there, Taylor Ellwood here, and welcome to the Magical Experiments live stream video tonight. And tonight I'm going to talk about how to clear out shock and other internal blockages, as well as how to clear out your environment. It's kind of appropriate for me to be making this video right now because yesterday, at the time of this video, so today's July 30th when I'm making this, but yesterday I quit my day job. It was my last day at work, and you know it was a wonderful thing to be able to say bye bye to that day job and to be able to do my writing and classes and stuff like that full time. But what was interesting is that even though it was a wonderful thing, I also started experiencing a state of shock. You might say, well, like I get it if you have a state of shock when you've had a car accident or something bad's happened, but why would you have a state of shock when something good happens? Like, what's going on with that, Taylor? And that's a great question to ask. We have to consider, first of all, what shock really is. Shock is a disruption to your system. It is a disruption to your processes, your routines, everything else. So when you experience shock, whether it's good or bad shock, it can still end up creating a situation where you get some internal blockages because things get disrupted. And in my case, yes, I'd quit the day job and this was a wonderful feeling, but I was still feeling this state of shock because all of a sudden, for the last 2 years and 9 months, according to LinkedIn, more like 2 years and 8 months, really. But for all that time, I'd been working at this job, and I'd come into a routine of sorts. I was in a place of comfortable discomfort for a while with this job, and that was fine. But I was ready to move on, and that was a good thing. And like yesterday, as soon as I got done with the job, I packed up the computers for my workstation and all that other stuff, and drove it right over to the office and all that good stuff. And I was very happy to drop it off and get rid of it and get rid of the badge and everything else, and know that I was never ever going to go back there. It was a wonderful feeling. But I was still in this state of shock because all of a sudden now I'm having to adjust to a new reality. In this case, now I'm adjusting to like what's my new routine going to be? Everything else. So today I was feeling this state of shock. And what stood out to me is how I recognized it as I recognized by how non-productive I was being. And I got it was taking me forever to write this newsletter that I was writing, and the reason why was because I kept having my mind go in a loop, and I kept feeling this block get in the way. And so what did I do about it? Well, I realized I needed to clear myself out. I needed to stop trying to work on what I was trying to work on, which wasn't getting me anywhere. So I stopped. I stopped working on the newsletter, saved what I was working on, and I went and I meditated. I did my sphere of art meditation. And then afterwards, I did the Qigong movement stuff. And I spent about a good, well, I spent my normal amount of time. I mean, I basically spent 3 hours doing all this work, which is what I normally do anyway, so that wasn't any change. But what it really did is it allowed the entire time I was doing all of this, I spent a fair amount of time just working my way through this shock to my system, dissolving it, releasing it, relaxing it, and reducing it and dissipating it and clearing it out. And the benefit of clearing it out is that as a result of that, I was able to get more focused. I got done with that. I came back over. I finished off my newsletter and I started writing a blog article, and like the creativity was back like that. But it all came right down to the fact that even though I'd had this wonderful situation occur where I was no longer working at the day job, I was still dealing with that sense of shock. Now, in our lives, we are going to inevitably have situations, good or bad, that come and create that sense of shock and throw off our thing, our habits, our routines, whatever else. And when you have that kind of disruption occur, what you want to pay attention to really is the behavior around it. Do you find yourself being less productive than you normally would be? Do you find yourself kind of just stuck in a rut? Do you find yourself not really getting anything done? Do you find yourself engaging in self-destructive behaviors? All these things and more can happen, and this can happen whether it's a good shock or a bad shock. Like, you get married, that's a good shock to your system, but it's still a shock. You get hit in a car accident, that's a bad shock. You lose somebody in your family or something like that, that's a bad shock. Whereas, let's like you get rid of your day job, that's a good shock. Nonetheless, all of these things in common have this shock, this disruption to your everyday life. And when you have that kind of disruption, it throws things off, and so you can find yourself engaging in behavior that is self-destructive or sabotage or whatever else, because what's happening is that shock is also activating things within you that need to still be released or worked through. This is actually a golden opportunity for you to not only dissolve the shock around the situation you're in, but also work through anything else that is continuing to have a life within you that needs to be worked through. So, like I said, in my case, I did meditation, I did my sphere of art ritual, I did qigong, and the entire time for the session, I just spent all that time just working through and gradually relaxing and releasing this stuff. It took me really, really, if I think about it, I spent 3 hours doing it. Probably within the first hour or so, I would say it was pretty much out of my system, because I'd done the work, and then I was just focusing on kind of going deeper. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes less. One of the things that you want to keep in mind in any situation where you have some kind of disruption like shock is that you want to, as soon as possible, start to do the dissolving work around it, to start working through it and relaxing and releasing it. And you will find that it gives you an opportunity to go deeper. And you can do this through whatever practice you're doing. You don't have to do the practices that I do in order to accomplish it. But ideally, you have some type of internal work process that you're doing that you can draw upon and use when you have an experience of shock. If you don't, that's where I would recommend, for example, the water breathing Taoist meditation technique that I practice, because that's a great way to go and release those blockages and help you kind of work through and dissolve anything that's going on internally as a result of the shock going through your system. What I found is that, once I did this, as I said, I got my creativity back, but it also really helped me to kind of understand like what was really going on. Why was I suddenly, after I'd had this wonderful experience happen, why was I suddenly going through these self-destructive routines? And it wasn't because some part of me didn't feel worthy of what happened. No, it was just simply these were specific old patterns that were in a way comfortable and familiar, even though they weren't good. And it goes back to that comfortable discomfort. And so recognizing them, I was like, all right, I need to undo that and, work through it as much as I possibly can and get myself back toward a more healthy, productive thing, which is ultimately better for me. Might be a bit more uncomfortable because right now I'm having to, reinvent my life a little bit. But really, when I put it into perspective, I'm not really having to reinvent my life that much. I'm just writing more without the interruptions of having to take phone calls from people or deal with their attitudes and negative behaviors. So, it's a good thing. But again, any disruption to your schedule can, even if it's a good one, can still be a shock to the system. And so learning to recognize that and work through it can be important. And also at the same time, one of the things that I did, and this was more like last night, and this was a good thing. And I came back from dropping off the workstation, and again, I wasn't feeling terribly productive at that point because I was still processing the shock. But the one thing I did, and I think this was a good thing for me to do, was that I went to my closet and I started digging through all my work clothes, and basically created a pile of things to donate. And what I was really doing was clearing out my environment. I cleared it out of the two computer monitors and the workstation and the damned headset that I don't no longer ever have to wear again. I got rid of all that stuff, and that was good. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to take this a step further and just get rid of everything. So I went through and I got rid of the clothes. I got rid of all the stuff I no longer needed, and essentially used this just as an opportunity to clear out the physical environment. Well, when you whether you're cleaning a house or you're doing something like that where you're going through and you're getting rid of the things you don't need anymore, that's a good opportunity to also clear your space energetically. And that was one of the first things that I did is I just cleared that out because by getting rid of any leftover negativity about that job or anything else, what I was doing is I was clearing the space and freeing and liberating myself from it instead of holding on to it. And then as a result of that, doing the internal work that I did today went deeper because I had nothing in the external environment to hold on to keep me in a space of negativity. So again, these are things to just kind of keep in mind in your life as you're going through and you're having your good and your bad shocks and whatever else. Is like, be prepared for the fact that you might have a disruption, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a reality of doing any kind of change in your life. If you can accept that shock, then you can work through it, you can relax and release it, and as a result, you can transform your life in a more positive direction or keep it going in a positive direction. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys at some point next week, or maybe sooner than later. Anyway, take care.